So for my truck, I needed some switches for auxiliary lighting and other things. I've got a refrigerator in the truck bed. So I needed something that would allow me to be able to switch things on and off. So I ordered this Lasfit Signature Series switch group. Now, as you can see, this is the full kit for the black switch group. You can see these look just like the factory aux switches from Mopar. Comes with the harness. Unlike the Mopar, this one has 4 40 amp circuits in it, or for switches, so that's a lot higher rating than the Mopar one. It includes the harness and all the harness accessories that need to go inside. I did opt for the optional tray on the other side. They do have another switch group that is another additional 4 switches, but I chose not to go with that. I'm not exactly keen on the labeling that they have on those 4 switches at this point. I would like to see maybe just some more generic auxiliary switch labeling as opposed to lockers and some of the things that they've got on it. What I did like about this is you can see this has this little RJ connector or pass-through, as you want to call it. This is so if you're mounting a GMRS radio remotely somewhere the head unit and you want to be able to plug in and remove your handheld microphone, you can do that right from the front there. So I'm actually looking at getting a Midland MTX 575 at some point, and I've already confirmed that that will work with that particular GMRS radio. Not really sure what all the brackets are for. This is the bracket for mounting it into the Jeep. This extra bracket, I haven't figured out what it is for yet, but it does align with this box, so I'm not sure what that's for unless you need an alternate mounting location. The instructions are not clear. So one thing I did notice is in unboxing, this connector is extremely loose. So I am going to take this apart and see if it's just something as simple as tightening the nut, but hopefully that's not something that was damaged in the in shipping. If so, I'm pretty sure Lasfit will replace that for me right away. Okay, bad news. So this watertight connector here, that plastic nut, is damaged. It just slides over the top of the threaded, over the threads, and it just pulls off. There's no tightening it down. I did find on here that there is one portion of the nut that looks like it was maybe over torqued with the tool and rounded off. So I think at the factory somebody just over torqued it and somehow it was missed by their quality control check. So be reaching out to Lasfit, see if they'll send me a new one, and we'll report back on how that went. I have to say, I was not anticipating them sending a whole brand new kit as a replacement, but that's what they did. And I was told to keep the old one in case I ever have a need of spare parts. So we'll see what I end up having to do with that one. But wow, next day air, as soon as they figured out what the problem was, sent me a whole brand new one. You can see here a whole entire kit, switch box, and these switch keys. Very impressive, Lasfit. Very impressive. The kit is going to come with 2 brackets. This one here, I'm assuming maybe that's for different make and model than the JT Gladiator I have. The other one is going to be this one. This is the one that we're going to use, and it's going to tuck right down into this pocket between the battery and the wall, and they include a nut for this space right here. So I'll be able to get rid of this relay, tie everything all into that box, and clean things up nicely. As you can see, I used the provided screws in the bag, screws and nuts, to attach this to the bracket that works for my truck. They provide this nice little Ziploc bag, has all the parts and pieces in it that you would need, and then you can see this bolt here is for the body to mount the bracket to in that spare hole, and then this nut, I'm assuming, is going to go to the battery. I have this just barely started. I put the provided bolt in this location and took out the factory bolt from this panel here and then rethreaded that in. Wanted to double check and make sure that there's very little tolerance here. It almost didn't look like this bolt would line up, but the stack tolerances, even though they're close, it's right up against a little plug that's down here, but it will fit, and I don't think rubbing against it is going to be much of an issue. So we're going to bolt this down and get it nice and tight and move on from there. The only downside I can see to this particular switch group at the moment is that the fuses are all inside this box. So there's four 40 amp fuses inside this box, one for each one of the switches. If one of those fuses blows and you're on the trail, it's going to require you to be able to pull both of these 10mm bolts out and lift this out to gain access to the screws on the box here, the 6 Phillips head screws. So not a big deal. If you're like me, you carry extra tools on the trail. But just a side note worth mentioning, I think, that this is not something that's going to be a quick, simple fix, but it's not a difficult fix if you blow a fuse. The instructions tell you to take and zip tie this cable to these nuts here, but there's plenty of space inside this little bracket here to feed the cable through and all the way down on the back side of the water reservoir and out the other end. So I didn't even worry about zip ties. I think it looks nice and clean the way that it is, and if you can do that just like I did, you should be good. One thing I was not aware of is that the Lasfit allows for both wiring up in the engine bay, and you have a secondary set of terminals that's going to pass through the firewall and go into the vehicle itself. So you have two different areas that you can wire up your accessories, either from inside the vehicle or from the engine bay. Pretty cool. You'll notice in the instructions that Lasfit shows this rubber gasket or grommet that goes through the firewall. They're showing you to put it on the opposite direction as what you see me having it on here. However, I could be wrong, but it seems more logical that this part should lead into the engine bay, especially as if you look closely here, this part here is smaller than this part, and it seems like this would snap into the firewall quicker, and then this would act as a stopper on this backside since it's a little bit larger diameter. So that's the route I'm going to run it. So it's going to go into the firewall like this, not like Lasfit shows it going into the firewall like that. So you decide. So routed like I had mentioned, you can see that this stops right up against the firewall, and I think that's actually correct. So next step is to pop this plastic panel out using a trim tool. So it's actually pretty easy. It's I've removed parts before and I felt like I was breaking things. This one came out relatively easily and didn't sound like I was going to break the entire unit. So the face pops off fairly easily, and we're going to remove this connector and this connector and pull this thing and set it aside. Next thing we need to do is remove this screw right here. It calls for a 5.5mm socket, but as you can see here, there is actually a Phillips head screw in its place. So since I don't have a 5.5mm, I'm just going to remove it with the Phillips. So if you don't have a 5.5, don't worry, most everybody's got a Phillips and you can just remove it easy enough. The second piece, same thing, pops out fairly easily. Just a couple of pins or clips around here and around this side. Pops out fairly easily. So pull that straight out, and then we can get access to the cables on the back and disconnect those as well. Next step is going to be removing all of these little bolts here. If you have a 7/16, that will work. So I found a 7/16 quarter drive, and it fits, so that's what I'm going to use to remove these screws. Now that all the screws have been removed, we can pull this tray off. See, we're just going to set that aside, and the other side's going to get half of this, and then we're going to put this get the frame here, put that in the other side. So looks just like the Mopar, only doesn't cost nearly as much. At some point I will replace this, and we'll put the red switch group, so it gives you 4 additional 40 amp switches, and those will go here. And it does retain this RJ45 or Cat 5 jack, so that if you're running a pass-through for a hidden or remote mounted GMRS or CB, you can still do that, and then you'll have 8 switches plus the RJ45 in the middle. Be sure that when you're putting these on that you overlap them correctly, so the tray goes in first and then the switch group goes on second. You can see that they overlap here, and there's some pins that help align them into place, so when you flip over the front side, everything is nice and flush. With that assembled and tightened back down, you can see that everything looks nice on the front side. I'm going to remove this. I'm actually going to plug in this cable that I have just for when I hook up my future purchase of my Midland MTX, either 275 or 575. So I can plug that directly into the unit, and then I'll plug the handheld device right into the front, and I can stow it away and nobody will know that I've got a nice piece of equipment in the Jeep that they might want to steal. Clean, simple install. Got plenty of power options now for all of my lighting and accessories needs. I'm not sure if yet if I will put the refrigerator or other things onto this switch group, but for now, this is adequate for what I have, and I can definitely expand from here. All right. The proof is in the pudding. Did we do it correctly? We're going to start up the engine and see what happens. And we have lights. Now, will it function if I push aux 1? It does. I have my ditch pods up here, and they are functioning, so I can turn them on.